Hello, dreamers. I'm the Success Dreamer. These stories are here to inspire you while you fall asleep. If they bring you peace and motivation, please like the video and subscribe. And before we begin, I'm genuinely curious. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? Let me know in the comments, because I love imagining how dreamers everywhere are connected through these stories. Now, breathe deeply, relax, and enjoy the story. Tonight, as the rain falls softly outside your window, let me take you to the streets of General Santos City in the Philippines. It is here, in a small town filled with noise, heat, and struggle, that a boy named Emmanuel Dapadran Pacquiao, known later to the world as Manny, was born. He did not come into a life of comfort. He was not born into wealth or even stability. Instead, his earliest memories were marked by hunger, by the sound of his stomach rumbling louder than the streets around him. Dreamers, picture this. A little boy, barefoot, walking under the sun with a basket of bread. He sold pandesal to neighbors just to earn a few coins that could buy rice for his family. At night, when the day was over, he didn't rest on a soft bed. Often, he would lay down on pieces of cardboard, looking up at the stars, whispering prayers that tomorrow would be better. This was not the life of a champion, not yet, but it was the life of someone destined for greatness. Manny's family lived in poverty so deep that some nights, there was simply no food at all. His father eventually left, and young Manny carried a burden too heavy for a child his age. He worked any way he could, selling bread, carrying water, doing small jobs. He wasn't just surviving for himself, he was fighting for his family's survival. But here's the secret, dreamer. Hardship can break you, or it can build you. And in Manny's case, every empty plate, every night on a hard floor, every rejection was building him into something unshakable. While others saw only a skinny boy with nothing, he was quietly shaping the heart of a warrior. Imagine him, dreamer, throwing punches in the air, barefoot in the dust, pretending the world was watching, even though it wasn't. Those early struggles carved into his soul the hunger that no amount of money could ever replace. A hunger not just for food, but for victory, for transformation, for something greater than himself. This is where the story of Manny Pacquiao truly begins. Not in the ring, not with the belts, not under the bright lights of Las Vegas, but right here, in the silence of his suffering. For before you can become a legend, you must first learn to fight life itself. And Manny Pacquiao fought life with everything he had. In the crowded streets of General Santos, survival often meant stepping into a fight. Long before Manny Pacquiao became a champion, he was just a boy with nothing in his pockets and everything to prove. For him, fighting wasn't a sport. It was a way to earn a few coins, enough to buy food and keep hunger away for another night. The arenas were not grand stadiums with flashing lights. They were small makeshift rings set up in dusty corners of town, where boys were thrown against each other for the entertainment of a crowd. Some spectators tossed coins onto the ground after the fight, a cruel prize for the ones who endured the pain. Manny was one of those boys, thin, barefoot, but carrying a fire inside him that no one could see yet. Each punch he threw carried desperation. Each punch he absorbed was a reminder that his body could take more than most people ever imagined. He wasn't fighting for fame or recognition, he was fighting for survival. And in those moments, when sweat mixed with blood under the heat of the sun, Manny was unknowingly forging the steel that would one day carry him into the history books. Dreamer, think of it this way. the world often overlooks these hidden battles. To most, it was just another poor boy getting beaten up in a backyard fight. But for Manny, every bruise was training. Every scar was preparation. Every drop of sweat was shaping the mindset of a champion. While others saw struggle, he was quietly building endurance, resilience, and hunger, the very qualities that separate ordinary men from legends. Sometimes he won, sometimes he lost. But no matter the outcome, he always got back up. That was his secret. He knew that defeat wasn't the end. It was just another lesson, another chance to grow tougher. Even as a boy, he carried the spirit of someone who could not be broken. These street fights gave him more than food for the day. They gave him the foundation for a dream. Manny realized that if his fists could keep him alive, maybe they could also carry him somewhere far greater. The dusty rings of General Santos may have looked small, but to him, they were the first stepping stones toward a much larger destiny. This was not the glory of world titles or the roar of thousands of fans. It was survival in its rawest form. And yet, it was in these forgotten fights, where no cameras rolled and no headlines were written, that the legend of Manny Pacquiao quietly began to take shape. At 14 years old, Manny Pacquiao made a decision most adults would fear to take. With nothing but a bag of clothes, a pair of worn-out shoes, and a dream heavier than anything he could carry, he left his home in General Santos and boarded a boat to Manila. He wasn't running away, he was running towards something he could feel in his heart, even if he couldn't yet see it. The journey itself was uncertain. Manny didn't have money for comfort. He didn't have relatives in high places waiting to welcome him. All he had was a cousin who promised to help him get started in the city. Manila was loud, crowded, and unforgiving. For a boy who had grown up in the quiet struggles of the province, it felt overwhelming. But Manny was determined. The thought of a better life for his mother and siblings gave him strength to endure the chaos. In Manila, Manny's days were filled with hunger, cramped sleeping spaces, and endless searching for opportunities to fight. He trained in small gyms, often without proper equipment, wrapping his hands with whatever cloth he could find. Many times he trained on an empty stomach, his body weak, but his spirit refusing to give in. The ring became his refuge, a place where poverty couldn't follow him, where every punch thrown was a step closer to his dream. Dreamer, imagine this scene. A boy barely a teenager, standing in a strange city with no safety net beneath him. Many others would have given up, gone back home, and accepted a life of poverty. But Manny couldn't. He refused to surrender to the life he was born into. He believed that if he worked harder than anyone else, if he endured more than anyone else, one day his fists would carry him and his family out of darkness. His early matches in Manila were far from glamorous. Small crowds, low pay, no fanfare. But Manny treated every fight like it was the world championship. He fought with hunger in his stomach and fire in his heart. People began to notice the boy's speed, his power, and most of all, his relentless will. Slowly, he was building a reputation, not just as a fighter, but as someone impossible to break. This leap of faith was more than a move to Manila. It was a declaration to himself and to the world. I will not be defined by where I was born. I will not be trapped by poverty. I will fight for something greater. It was risky, uncertain, and dangerous. But legends are never born in comfort. They are born in courage. And Manny Pacquiao's courage had just begun to roar. In the hidden corners of Manila, Small boxing gyms buzzed with the sound of skipping ropes, leather gloves striking worn-out bags, and the steady rhythm of young fighters chasing dreams. Among them was Manny Pacquiao, thin, undersized, but carrying a determination that no one could miss. He wasn't the tallest, he wasn't the strongest, but he was fast, fearless, and willing to endure more than anyone else inside the ring. His early days as an amateur fighter were filled with challenges. Trainers doubted him. Some thought he was too small, too fragile, too poor to ever make it in the sport. But Manny silenced doubts the only way he knew how, by fighting. Every time he stepped into the ring, he unleashed a storm of punches, overwhelming opponents who underestimated him. He was a blur of speed, a hurricane of energy. He didn't just fight, he attacked every second as if his life depended on it, because often it did. Slowly, whispers began to spread. There was this boy from Mindanao, barely 5'5", who fought like his fists were powered by hunger itself. Word traveled among promoters and trainers. People started coming to watch him. The crowds were still small, the prize money still meager, but something was happening. Manny Pacquiao was no longer just another boy in the gym. He was becoming a name worth remembering. Dreamer, picture him stepping out of those small rings after each fight. Sweat dripping, lips cut, eyes bruised, but smiling. Not because it was easy, but because every fight meant progress. Every fight was a step toward lifting his family out of poverty. Those victories were not just his, they belonged to his mother, his siblings, and everyone back home who believed in him. His rise was not without setbacks. There were defeats, moments of doubt, nights when his body screamed for rest. But Manny had already learned from life itself that quitting was never an option. He took every loss as a lesson, every injury as fuel. With each challenge, he grew sharper, tougher, hungrier. It was in these years that he earned his first professional fights. No longer just a boy trying to survive, he was now a fighter with a record, a name, and a future. He didn't have fame yet, but he had momentum. The local boxing community began to take notice. Here was a young man who refused to be broken, who fought with a ferocity that seemed to come from a deeper place than most could understand. And so, Manny Pacquiao's climb began, not in the grand arenas of the world, but in the sweat-soaked gyms and small-town rings of the Philippines. Each punch, each victory, each lesson carved him closer to the champion he was destined to be. This was the rise of a fighter whose story had only just begun. For years, Manny Pacquiao fought in the shadows, small rings, small crowds, small pay. But destiny was waiting for him to step into the light. That moment came in 1998 when he faced Thailand's Chache Sasikal for the WBC flyweight title. To many, Manny was just another challenger. To those who knew his story, he was carrying more than gloves into that ring. He was carrying the weight of his family's hunger, the prayers of his mother, and the fire of every struggle he had endured. The fight was not easy. Sasikal was experienced, confident, and favored to win. Manny, on the other hand, was still seen as raw, a fighter with speed, yes, but not the polish or reputation of a true champion. Yet when the bell rang, Pacquiao unleashed the relentless style that had been forged in years of survival. He swarmed, he pressured, he threw punches in waves that seemed endless. Round after round, the crowd began to feel it. This wasn't just another fight. This was a boy from the streets of General Santos announcing himself to the world. In the 8th round, Manny landed a crushing left hand that sent Sassical to the canvas. The referee's count reached 10, and just like that, the skinny boy who once fought for bread had become a world champion. Dreamer, imagine the feeling of that moment. From selling pandesal and sleeping on cardboard, to raising a championship belt high above his head. It wasn't just victory, it was validation. Proof that dreams are not defined by where you start, but by how fiercely you refuse to quit. That night changed everything. Manny Pacquiao was no longer just a struggling fighter. He was now the WBC flyweight champion, the first step in a journey that would eventually see him conquer 8 different weight divisions, something no other boxer in history has achieved. But at that moment, in 1998, it was simply the breakthrough he had been waiting for, the moment the world finally took notice. Still, success did not mean comfort. Manny's pay was modest compared to the champions of bigger markets. He continued to train with the same hunger, because he knew that one title was not the end, it was only the beginning. The world had seen him, yes, but he was far from done. His breakthrough fight taught him that dreams are not impossible. They are waiting for those willing to suffer, to sacrifice, and to take their shot when it comes. And Manny Pacquiao, the boy who once fought in dusty streets for survival, had just taken his first shot at history and landed it. Success is never a straight climb. After Manny Pacquiao's breakthrough, the world began to notice him, but recognition also brought heavier expectations, stronger opponents, and greater pressure. The boy who once fought with nothing to lose was now a champion with everything at stake. And with that came setbacks. One of the first came in 1999, barely a year after winning his flyweight title. Manny faced Medgon Singcharat, another Thai fighter. He entered the fight drained, weak from the struggle to cut down to 112 pounds. His body had grown, but his dream to defend his belt forced him to push himself beyond limits. In the 3rd round, a crushing body shot ended the fight. Just like that, his world title was gone. For many, this would have been the end of the story. A short-lived champion, a flash in the pan. But Manny didn't see it that way. Losing the belt was painful, yes, but it was also a lesson. He realized he could no longer starve himself to fit into divisions that no longer suited his body. Instead of quitting, he moved up in weight, carrying not only his fists, but also his resilience. The sacrifices never stopped. Every fight meant months away from home, endless hours of grueling training, bloodied hands, swollen knuckles, aching bones. He gave up comfort, gave up rest, and sometimes even gave up the chance to be with his loved ones, all to chase something larger than himself. But setbacks weren't only in the ring. Outside of boxing, Manny still carried the scars of poverty. Even as he earned more, he sent money back home, making sure his family never had to live the same hunger he endured. Sometimes, his generosity left him with little for himself, but that didn't matter. For Manny, success was never just personal. It was for everyone who believed in him, everyone who depended on him. Dreamer, think about this. How many times in life do we stop when we stumble? How many dreams are abandoned after the first defeat? Manny Pacquiao teaches us that setbacks are not signals to quit. They are signs to grow, to adapt, to fight smarter. His early losses did not destroy him. They sharpened him. By moving up in weight, he discovered new strength. By accepting defeat, he built greater resilience. And by sacrificing comfort, he unlocked the discipline that would eventually carry him to global greatness. In the silence after that first crushing loss, Manny Pacquiao could have disappeared, but instead, he chose to rise. And every dreamer knows that choice, to rise again after falling, that is where true champions are born. When Manny Pacquiao first set foot in the United States, he was not a superstar. He was just another fighter from far away, unknown to the casual fan, and proven on the biggest stage. The arenas of Las Vegas and Los Angeles were filled with legends, fighters whose names echoed across the world. Manny was an outsider, but as we know, outsiders often carry the fiercest fire. In 2001, an opportunity opened unexpectedly. The opponent was Lelehanalo Ledwaba, the IBF Super Bantamweight champion. Manny wasn't even supposed to be there. He was called in as a late replacement, practically unknown to the American audience. The odds were against him. But that night at the MGM Grand, Pacquiao unleashed his speed, his ferocity, and his heart. Round after round, he overwhelmed Ledwaba until the fight was stopped. A new champion was born, and America had just witnessed the arrival of a phenomenon. That fight was more than a win, it was the spark that lit Manny's global journey. Trainers, promoters, and fans began to notice something different about him. He wasn't just fast. He wasn't just powerful. He had a relentless drive, the kind of hunger that no paycheck could satisfy. Every punch he threw was a reminder of the boy who once went to bed hungry, who now fought so no child in his family would ever have to. Dreamer, imagine the courage it takes to step into another country, thousands of miles from home, with no guarantee of success. That was Manny's reality. He didn't just fight opponents, he fought doubt. He fought homesickness. He fought the pressure of proving that a boy from General Santos could belong among the world's best. And then came the fights that made his name echo worldwide. Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, Juan Manuel Marquez, the great warriors of Mexico, men already legends in the sport, faced this unassuming Filipino southpaw, and one by one, they learned his name the hard way. Pacquiao wasn't just winning. He was dominating, shocking the boxing world with his speed, his combinations, and his courage to take risks. The American press gave him nicknames, the Pac-Man, the Mexicutioner. But behind the titles and cheers was still the same Manny, a man who trained harder than anyone, who remained humble, who never forgot to smile and thank God after every fight. His story wasn't just about boxing, it was about hope. By the mid-2000s, Manny Pacquiao was no longer an underdog. He was a rising star, an international icon, a symbol of pride for millions of Filipinos watching from home. He carried not just the flag of a nation, but the dreams of a people who saw in him proof that even the smallest voice can roar across the world. Dreamer, the road to stardom is never easy. But Manny shows us this truth. When opportunity knocks, you don't hesitate, you answer with everything you've got. One fight changed his life, and from that moment, the world would never look at him the same way again. By the late 2000s, Manny Pacquiao was no longer just a champion. He was a phenomenon. Most fighters spend their careers in 1 or 2 weight divisions. Some dare to climb higher, but very few succeed. Manny wasn't content with limits. He fought across divisions, carrying with him the same hunger he felt as a boy on the streets of General Santos. In 2008, Manny dominated David Diaz to win the WBC lightweight title. But instead of staying there, he took on a much bigger challenge. Oscar de la Hoya, the golden boy of boxing, a superstar who had ruled the sport for over a decade. Experts called Manny too small. But on fight night, his speed, accuracy, and relentless energy made De La Hoya look old and helpless. De La Hoya couldn't continue after the 8th round. That night, the boxing world shifted. Pacquiao became the sport's new face. In 2009, he faced Ricky Hatton, beloved by British fans and undefeated at 140 pounds. It took Manny only 2 rounds. A lightning left hand sent Hatton crashing to the canvas in one of the most brutal knockouts in boxing history. The world gasped, and Manny's legend grew. Later that same year, he moved up again to fight Puerto Rican warrior Miguel Cotto. Cotto was bigger, stronger, and known for breaking opponents with power shots. But Manny's relentless combinations, speed, and willpower wore him down. By the 12th round, the referee stepped in. With that victory, Pacquiao became the first boxer ever to win titles in 7 different weight classes. Eventually, he would make it 8, an achievement no one else in history has matched. Dreamer paused for a moment. A boy who once sold bread just to eat was now climbing into the ring with champions far larger than him and beating them. His belts weren't just symbols of boxing glory. They were proof that no obstacle, no opponent, and no expectation could define him. The world now called him the pound-for-pound king. He was regarded as the best fighter on earth, regardless of weight. But through it all, Manny remained grounded. He smiled, prayed, and thanked his fans. He didn't boast. He carried himself with the same humility that had always defined him. And back in the Philippines, whenever Manny fought, the nation stood still. Streets emptied, crime rates dropped, and millions crowded around televisions to watch their hero. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for every Filipino who believed that dreams, no matter how impossible, could come true. Dreamer, here's the truth. Greatness doesn't live in comfort zones. It lives in courage, the courage to rise, to risk, and to take on challenges no one believes you can win. Manny Pacquiao didn't just conquer opponents, he conquered doubt. And that's why the world crowned him the pound-for-pound king. By the 2010s, Manny Pacquiao was more than a boxer. He had become a symbol. To the world, he was a global sports icon. To Filipinos, he was family. They didn't just watch him fight, they lived every punch with him. When Manny stepped into the ring, the Philippines transformed. Streets that were usually filled with jeepneys, motorcycles, and the buzz of daily life fell silent. Crime rates dropped to near zero. Families, neighbors, and entire barangays gathered around televisions, radios, and even tiny screens in sari-sari stores. Everyone cheered as one voice. Win or lose, Manny carried the hopes of a nation each time he laced up his gloves. But Manny's role went beyond boxing. He understood the weight of his influence. Coming from poverty himself, he felt a duty to give back. He built homes for the poor, paid for hospital bills, and funded scholarships. He wasn't doing it for publicity. He knew the pain of hunger, the sting of being overlooked, the desperation of not knowing what tomorrow would bring. His success was never meant for himself alone. It was meant to uplift others. Soon, his compassion and leadership pushed him into a new arena, politics. Many questioned if a boxer could serve in government, but Manny's answer was simple. If he could fight for his country in the ring, why not fight for them in the halls of power? He became a congressman, then a senator, carrying the same determination he brought into every bout. Of course, politics brought its share of criticism and challenges. But Dreamer, that's the truth about leadership. No matter what you do, there will always be doubters. What set Manny apart was that he never forgot where he came from. Every decision he made, whether praised or criticized, was anchored on the boy who once walked the dusty roads of Mindanao with nothing but a dream. In the boxing world, Manny continued to fight legends. Shane Mosley, Juan Manuel Marquez, and Antonio Margarito. Some victories came easy, others hard, and some defeats stung deeply. But what kept fans loyal wasn't just his wins. It was his heart. He never backed down from challenges, never made excuses, and always carried himself with humility. That's why people didn't just see him as a fighter. They saw him as a champion of the people. Dreamer, think about this. True champions aren't measured by belts, trophies, or records. They're measured by how they lift others while climbing themselves. Manny Pacquiao showed that greatness isn't about standing above people, it's about standing with them. That's why to millions around the world, he wasn't just a boxing champion. He was, and always will be, the people's champion. Manny Pacquiao's story is one of those rare journeys that feel larger than life, yet deeply human. From a boy who slept on the streets and sold bread to survive, to a man who stood under the brightest lights of the boxing world, his life has become a symbol of what's possible when faith, courage, and hard work unite. In the ring, his legacy is unmatched. 8 world titles across 8 different weight divisions, a feat no one has ever accomplished. He faced legends, silenced doubters, and carved his name into history as one of the greatest fighters of all time. But even those numbers, as dazzling as they are, don't fully capture who Manny Pacquiao is, because his legacy extends beyond the ropes. For the Filipino people, Manny was more than a boxer. He was hope in human form. Every victory reminded them that even those born with nothing could rise to greatness. Every defeat taught them resilience and dignity. Through his journey, he became a mirror of the Filipino spirit. Hardworking, relentless, and full of faith. Outside the ring, Manny embraced many roles: public servant, philanthropist, singer, actor, and preacher. Not all were perfect. He made mistakes, faced criticism, and stumbled at times. But Dreamer, that's part of the beauty of his story. He wasn't flawless, and he never claimed to be. His imperfections made him real. His persistence made him inspiring. Even now, long after most fighters have hung up their gloves, Manny still steps into the ring. Recently, at an age where most men are far from their prime, he fought Mario Barrios in an exhibition that ended in a draw. It wasn't about victory. It was about showing the world that fire, courage, and love for the sport can outlast time itself. That moment reminded everyone, Manny Pacquiao's fighting spirit is eternal. Perhaps Manny's greatest lesson is this: success is not about where you start, but how far you're willing to go. It's not about the punches you throw, but the punches you take. And still keep standing. His life teaches us that no dream is too distant, no obstacle too great, if you refuse to give up. As his boxing gloves now rest, Manny's legacy continues to echo in gyms, homes, and hearts around the world. Young fighters shadowbox, imagining themselves following in his footsteps. Ordinary dreamers look at his journey and whisper, if Manny can do it, maybe I can too. And that dreamer is the true mark of greatness, not just winning titles, but inspiring others to chase their own. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope that by now your mind is calm, your heart is light, and you are already drifting into sleep, or perhaps already asleep. From here on, you'll hear only the soothing sound of rain, guiding you deeper into rest. Sweet dreams, dreamer. May tomorrow bring you peace, purpose, and inspiration.